Hello, Stuffing Guys and Gals. This is Stuffing Guy 912 here, bringing you the final map in the Ravenholm chapter after nearly 2 months of covering the maps from said chapter. Although D1_town_05 is more of an interlude between this chapter and the Highway 17 chapter, it is nevertheless still a part of Ravenholm regardless. With that out of the way, let's finish this chapter pronto. Alright, and we are now properly in the map. Just a quick disclaimer, I'm a little bit under the weather, I'm still recovering, so my voice might be a little bit milky or nasally, just FYI. So starting off, when we go out from the entrance, we have this lambda cache here that's guarded by a poison head crab. And the lambda cache is covered by these very peculiar array of ventilation shafts that we've not seen before, and obviously, as you can see, they just kind of end up here and kind of just taper off here. So I'm assuming that these are just purely here for the sake of it being a lambda cache and nothing more. And then more to the point, looking back from the way we exited from, with the mining railway kind of ending right here with no post to stop it, there's like no signage of any kind for this mine shaft that is perpendicular to this train area, which I find very peculiar as well. And then over to the left here, you can see kind of a foreshadowing for what's to come is more of these weird industrial interior bridges that like Half-Life 2 just really loves to use when pertinent. They'll be important to note regarding the snipers that we're going to deal with. And then before we come across into some last vestiges of Ravenholm regarding the fast zombie, we have this bridge here that is not very well textured, but as you can see, it would be colliding with this tree, particularly with the roots down here, and then the branches being extremely low to what would be a car that would drive across here if there was one. So we shall go on, because there's not really much to comment on here. Then we come across the first instance of the snipers. And obviously you have to deal with them with a grenade, but obviously their placement kind of bends a little bit the fabric of the suspension of disbelief regarding the architecture, as you can tell. It just, he's beset by this weird interior bridge thing between these two buildings. Not sure why it would be arranged this way. I mean, obviously there's not anything necessarily wrong with this, and obviously, like, architecture of this design does exist in real life. Like, I know there's one in Portland that has something like this, notably, but I don't think they exist in this frequency like they do in Half-Life 2, for that matter. And there's going to be more inexplicable versions of this as we come across, as we go along. And then immediately to our left, out of bounds, is just a random gap in these fences here. And I don't know why this is here. I don't know if it's just because they realize the fence assets wouldn't be able to make one that was able to fill this gap, so they just said, fuck it, I guess, because this is out of bounds, so it doesn't really matter. That's my guess anyway. And then we go over this way, and there's a second sniper we have to deal with, although I don't have to deal with it at all. We have this little side corner over here with some boxes, a door, and this weird structure here, which I have no idea what this is even supposed to be. Like, you know, my guess is that it's supposed to be a water tower, but it's weirdly angular for a water tower. Like, usually water towers are either cylindrical or square, or spherical. Spherical, you know, that whole meme. But regardless, yeah, it's a little bit odd. And then immediately to the left, we have our old friend, the signal switches. Now, way back during the train station maps that I covered, I had mentioned that I don't really have a innate knowledge about these signal switches, but there was a comment way back when that mentioned that these signal switches are only for locomotives that are electric powered, whereas most of the locomotives here are usually diesel or coal powered, as pertaining to like the post-Soviet era that they were kind of going with in terms of the overall setting of Half-Life 2. So they must have taken these assets from the train station, the actual train station that the train station in Half-Life 2 is based on, which was modern, at least modern for 2002 as far as they were concerned, and didn't really think to consider whether this would tie in with the more post-Soviet era tankers or carts or locomotives for that matter. And then we go over here, the sniper shoots a bomb or a barrel, and we have to crawl underneath the this car over here, and we have to deal with him here. And obviously, as you can tell, going up here, you can see again where the architecture has to bend a little bit, where this fence just inexplicably ends right here, flush alongside this interior bridge, or whatever you want to call it. And again, I don't know why this would be split like this. Who knows? You know? Other than for gameplay, of course. And then before we go on, obviously Half-Life 2 is an old game, and there are a lot of things about Half-Life 2 that are impressive for its time. But as you look directly down, you can kind of see where the technology kind of falters a bit, where they had definitely taken some, I think they took either pictures of actual like train tracks, but it couldn't find one that like actually curved, so they kind of just had to slap them on like this, as you can tell, just the way they just are awkwardly set along like this. But you know, they're also extremely well detailed for a game this old, and for the time, for the technology that was available at that time, as you can tell. And then we go through all these derailed train carts, which is also going to be important for later. We come across our first Combine soldiers. They're dealing with zombies. There is a little bit of a question about odd architecture in relation to enemy placement, because further along we come across some more Combine soldiers that we fight. So I don't know how these two Combine soldiers got displaced from the rest of the Combine soldiers to fight these zombies. And then, more to the point, given that we don't see any other zombie corpses, it's almost like they were waiting for us to arrive to start on cue to attack them. But yeah. And then over here, inside of this container, we come across the AR-2. But this container is very peculiar because it has a ladder. And the only other container that I recall that actually has a ladder on the end of it is the one in D1 underscore canals underscore 01, where you talk to the Vortigaunt and that rebel dude. Because he even has the little hatch that you drop down from and then talk to them. And then also the doorway here on the side where you walk out. So I thought that was very curious that they reused this asset here in a pretty subtle way. Like, it wouldn't be immediately apparent to somebody that this is the same asset. Even though, obviously, there's not really much of a point to climb up here, other than, I guess, to get a vantage point. And speaking of, we have to go really fast through here, because outside of the bounds, for some reason, there's a G-Man sighting. Even though you can't even see this G-Man sighting. He's, like, outside of the derailed carts here. You can't even see him from any... I mean, unless you go really fast through this level, you might be able to get a glimpse of him somewhere. But, like, it's going to be nearly impossible to see him through the wreckage of all these train carts. Which I found very, funny. And then speaking of which, of derailment, we have these two rail assets that just kind of stop into the gravel and have no posts to stop them from derailing, which I guess is of no surprise considering how many train carts are derailed on this map in particular. So I kind of find that a weird consistency in terms of the oddity of not having posts for these train carts. And then obviously when we get to a certain point, we have more Combine soldiers we got to deal with. And this is another example of odd architecture in relation to enemy placement, because the Combine soldiers were on the offensive to the soon-to-be rebels we're going to come across inside of the warehouse, and yet they had more Combine soldiers flush outside here to attack you. I guess they were somehow aware of your presence. Now, maybe this might be tactically sound, like they're trying to cover all their bases so they don't get ambushed, I guess. So maybe this is more practical than I realize. It does call into question how they knew you were even coming here in the first place. And then more to the point about the overall area. So we have these assortment of cars and barrels, because of course, you know, this is basically just like, this area is just like a little playground to just like fuck around with the Combine in gruesome ways, however you want to take it. But we have this parking lot with these cars that do seem, most of them seem to be arranged as to align with the parking lot, like, stripes, but as you can tell, some of them aren't. And they're just kind of plopped there, just higgledy-piggledy. Like, I don't even think you can make a good argument that they were pushed around through, like, natural means. They were just seemingly placed here by God. Or, I guess, Gaben. As Gaben ordained it. So, we will go past here. Now, this section I actually have to kill some of these Combine dudes to proceed into the further parts. So, just let me take care of that. Weirdly enough, I do not have to kill the ones outside there for this to play out. And then I have to turn off no target so that this NPC can interact with me. They're going to talk about how Wilson's been hit and all that jazz. Now, the interior of this warehouse, there's not really anything out of the ordinary. The only thing that seems a little bit odd is these two turbines that are just kind of placed here awkwardly. Like, I guess this is the way for this warehouse to get power. I guess it's some kind of, like, car garage or something with the crane and all these, you know, broken cars here, I'm guessing. I mean, it's not exactly clear, and it's going to get a little bit more confusing when we go into the Highway 17 chapter on the back end. So obviously we go to him, he wants us to follow him, I'm just gonna braze through. So we go into this, I guess you could say it's like the storerooms of the back of the warehouse that became like a rebel kind of resting spot, I guess, respite. But I'm not sure what is the deal with this area of the what was a storehouse being slightly lower than the rest of the floor in this storehouse here. And then more to the point of the low clearance, we have all these poles here, or pipes, that you can literally hit your head on them if you jump on them. Like, see? Like, I can literally hit my player model by just jumping on them, which I find amusing with the low clearance. And then we have this map here, which, like with the water hazard map, this will also be very important to take notes on in regards to how consistent this map is with the actual map that we play in throughout the Highway 17 chapter. And then finally, we have this little TV screen of Alex talking to us. And it's supposed to give you the impression that she's talking to us through some broken comms. But this visual is just a few images with some random effects thrown on it to give you the impression that it is, like, animated when it's not. It's basically a GIF. Not really an actual video, unlike the Eli one in one of the hangar bay doors in the Eli chapter. And then, as for the entire nature of this map in relation to Ravenholm, it doesn't collide with anything, but given that this railway was really, like, it was much lower ground level to Ravenholm as a whole, and keep in mind, too, the first map of Ravenholm was literally at the water level at the bottom of that dam. So this area is even lower at ground level than we assume, even though it's still slightly elevated from the actual sea level into the Highway 17 chapter. And then with that, that is it for D1_town_05. And that is it for that map and the entirety of the Ravenholm chapter. As per usual, when I complete a chapter of Half-Life 2, I usually intersperse it with a TF2 map. And to keep in line with the weekly upload of these things, the art architecture for the next TF2 map will also come next week. So, tune in next time.